In fact, when I was a member of the Communist Party, the communists ordered me to incite other of my people to riot.
Vigilante wins in here with a very simple question, as what is going on with all these protests across the country about immigration? Astroturf, that's what's going on. This is not a question, this is a statement. Now listen, I can see both sides of the immigration issue. I understand you need to protect your borders as a country. I understand that you need to enforce immigration, and a lot of other countries do. I also understand that America made their bed and wanted that cheap labor and allowed a gray area for illegals for a long time, and that there's something to be said about that too. And so I get both sides of it. So this video is not about how should America handle its immigration per se. It is about my belief. All I can say is a belief. There's some visual evidence which I'll get into slightly, and hopefully I'll have clips and stuff that I can find that'll also exemplify the point. Maybe it won't. We'll see later when I do the editing. But these protests are Astroturf. Going back to said immigrants, illegals, whatever, a lot of people come up with different terms, but the party at large, if you're talking about a lot of these immigrants who have been in the country for years and years, I don't understand the logic of being in a country for years and years and then going into a widely publicized protest, and a widely publicized to have military amongst police action in the protest. Now, I'm not saying there's no immigrants in these protests, but I can assure you, just using basic logic and visual evidence again, and prior history, which I'll get into shortly, that most of these protests are Americans. Most of these protesters are American. I think that's something that needs to be said. It's something that needs to be said. And while we're at it, if we're being very specific, I'm not the guy who likes all the racial constructs that are put on the people. I'm not, I think it's much more accurate to say so-called white and so-called black if you know the history, especially the history of those censuses in this country and paper genocide, all that good stuff. That's another conversation for another day. But I can't, and I know there's light-skinned Latinos. I know that there's Latinos that are passed for Caucasian, but it looks like all these protesters are white. And 5 years ago, Summer of Love 2020, we had all these BLM marchers, and 85% of the participants of all the violence and all the action that got attributed to Black Lives Matter and black people was committed by Antifa, mainly making up education employees from the Pacific Northwest. And I've talked about it ad nauseum. I don't know if this stuff is up because a lot of my stuff from the 2020 era got pulled by YouTube for the stuff I was talking about. But if it is up, if you can see one of these old streams, there's streams of me. You can see them pushing supplies and stuff during these protests. There were clips of them with U-Hauls, with equipment and stuff like that. And there were stories about all these people who happen to be from the Pacific Northwest, happen to be linked to the education system, and they would go to one city, even cities that they didn't know anything about. Some of these quote-unquote protesters were even chased out of cities by black people.
Organizers of a rally at the 7th District in Inglewood met some resistance last night from the community. Black Lives Matter Chicago called for a rally at the police station on 63rd Street. But some Inglewood residents pushed back on what they saw as an intrusion.
I'm not pro-police, but if I have a working relationship with the few good police we have, then don't disrupt that.
If you're gonna do something, do it right. And you put other people's lives at risk when you come into neighborhoods. You don't know the dynamics.
So, but that's not the narrative that was pushed. So if I'm being very coy and being very official, but the long and short is 5 years ago, a bunch of white people smashed up a bunch of shit, ran in a bunch of targets, and they blamed it on us. I'm not saying that black people never do nothing. No, I've seen clips of black people with garbage bags looting and shit too. I'm not saying that black people do no looting. I'm not saying that Latino people are doing no looting or doing no violence. But I'm saying a good majority of that was committed by white people, but it was blamed on black people. And I'm seeing the same thing happen here, where a good majority of these protesters and this violence and the people throwing shit at cops, they look pretty light-skinned, is all I'm trying to say. They don't necessarily look brown. And I saw that 5 years ago. Am I saying that no black people participated 5 years ago? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's a narrative that gets pushed. And a lot of this stuff is AstroTurf. A lot of this stuff is controlled opposition. I've even heard, as far as these current protests, that Walmart might be a part of the funding for a lot of these protests. They don't organically move major cities to major cities. That's not how it works. They inorganically move when you're talking about intelligence agencies who are often the whether you're talking about these protests, January 9th, January 6th, wasn't it? Whatever. 9 times out of 10 is a Fed. 9 times out of 10, whatever you see on TV and you think, oh, the civil unrest, look what we're doing as a country. We're not doing shit. We're at home on our phones looking at TikTok. The feds are doing shit, or a few radical psychopaths that the feds have been able to convince for a cause of doing shit, and then they attribute it to whatever group they want, because that's the way the media works. That's the way media narratives work. So again, this video is not about what you feel about immigration. I see both sides of it. We definitely should enforce our immigration laws, but we definitely have been halfway crooks with it. This shit shouldn't have even fell to a Donald Trump. It should have been something that's handled by a Ronald Reagan or something way back in the day. This situation should not be happening to this generation. But the other, and I'm not even a generation guy. I'm not the guy who keeps, boomers did this or the zoomers do that or the millennials. I'm not that guy, but I'm just saying this issue, when you're talking about the gray area of cheap labor that America has enjoyed, including this state I'm in, Texas, has enjoyed from a lot of quote unquote illegal immigrants, and having that gray area is why you have so many people who are for them now, and rightfully so. And I understand also, rightfully so, you got to enforce your borders. A lot of other countries enforce their borders without as much criticism as we get. I get that too. I get both sides of it. But these protests are AstroTurf. These protests are fake. You're not going to convince me that a bunch of people who have been in this country for years and years and years, with a gray area at best legal status, and in a lot of cases not legal at all, are going to risk their livelihood and their lives and their legal status to go protest in these major cities. You're not going to convince me that's legitimate. It is mainly education related, and I haven't done the demographics on these protests, but I'll give you this much conjecture. My belief is there are probably a lot of students and a lot of teachers, and they're probably all from certain areas of the country who get moved around, because that's what happened in the summer of love. What do you think, though? What are your thoughts about the protests, immigration, anything? This channel, which, I'm about to do a bunch of sports talk for the next few weeks, covering NFL teams, even though I conjecture, news and everything else, and streams, video games, all the sort of stuff that makes the algorithm not happy with me because I don't stick to one subject. You tell me what you think about this video or this channel. I will talk to you guys later. Peace.